Okay, everyone, this is my spoiler review of The Curse, Episode 7, Self-Exclusion. Before I jump into this review, hit that sub button. I can use all the subscribers I can get. It really means so much, and you don't want to miss any reviews I'm doing of The Curse. I'll also be doing the new season of True Detective, so you're not going to want to miss that as well. So with my review this week, I'm going to start talking with everything that goes on with Whitney in this episode. Then we'll go into Asher, and then we're actually going to finish with Nala. Now, Whitney has the most cringiest sequence yet in this show for her when she goes to get this racist statue that she saw in the text with Dougie and Cara, and it is at this mini golf course. She actually buys it off the owner. I love when the owner buys it off of her and him yelling at his employee, and you'll see that later on when she goes get money from her dad, that when he's in the bank employee is also just being nasty to his coworkers. That is a cool thing in this show, that they just have very realistic, even background characters. And we get to see Whitney just having her big white girl unleashed power here, head nodding to Robin's Dancing on My Own. And she brings to Cara the statue, places it on her door. This is where it was the most cringe. And it's just a joke that's not landing. And she's ready to call the police, Cara, because this clearly could be seen as a hate crime. But we know with Whitney's intentions here that she is doing anything she can to get Cara to sign this release form, because it's panic time. They want to be able to air this show without having to have everything blurry. And like Dougie said, he thinks it's going to be impossible to even air it without this contract being signed. Now, Whitney actually printed out the release form and has it there ready to go. And this is where Cara is actually truthful with Whitney and tells her she doesn't want an art in the show. Considering what your parents do, they take advantage of poor people. This is where the manipulation starts on Cara from Whitney, and like full-on manipulation, because she brings up something that will make her now the victim in the situation. Like, I'm unhappy in my marriage. All he cares about are the financials. And then she's like, I was going to ask you to be a consultant. It was going to be so special. And she even says it twice. She says again later, I was so excited. It was going to be so special. Like, really driving home to get into Cara's head here what she wants. And what changes everything, though, and Cara is aware. Like, she could see right through Whitney, but Cara can be bought. Basically, Whitney offers her 15 to 20K for this job as a consultant. So this is a classic case of money talks. And Cara can even read through this, that this is also about getting the artwork cleared. That's why she brings it up. Again, like, this isn't just about the art. And she's like, no, no, no. But meanwhile, the next time Whitney sees her, she always has that contract for the art ready to go. Now, what will add to Whitney just being so over Asher at this point is seeing the casino footage and Asher actually being in the casino security footage and looking guilty. I'm going to break that down more when we get to Asher's side of it, because that's where I think it's more important to look at that way. But that's for Whitney's point of view there. It's just another part of this puzzle that's making her want to start really distancing yourself from Asher. You really see how privileged Whitney is in this episode more than any other episode, because you're seeing constantly these charges come for her credit card from the store of the jeans because of theft, and you're seeing $450 being charged. Now, imagine living a life where that's not a big deal. Like, to me, that's a day ruiner. I don't know about you. That's actually a month ruiner. So she's having this constantly happen, and it's like a hiccup for her. And you'll see that her dad gives her 40K cash. So she asked for 30 just to get her own 10. And then he gives her a safety 10, like a father usually would in that situation. And I love that out of this, when you look back at it, she gave Cara 20K and she still made 20K herself, just showing you that privilege and be able to get money on the dime like that and in cash. I also love how brutal Cara is to her roommate for some reason. She's like, I'm using the kitchen, and then has a lock on the freezer. So she obviously doesn't trust her roommate with her stuff. And you notice right after, in that same scene, the minute Whitney gives the 20K to Cara, asks again about the art, like right after, and she signs the contract. And then they play horse, right? So they actually have a bonding friendship moment that's so just fake and artificial. And you literally see that Whitney has also not only bought someone out to sign a contract for the art release, she's also bought a friendship here. It's very crazy. Now, my favorite scene of this episode was when Whitney does her interview with Dougie for the show. If there's one thing that's going to really make her a favorite to win an Emmy for the show, which she rightfully deserves, it's this scene. And when he says, how's your relationship going to Whitney, she says, you would think that if you spent years with someone, that eventually at some point you'd feel like you really know them, but honestly maybe you never do. You'd start to see these glimpses of a person you don't recognize, and it's scary. So this makes me think too how right after the scene they cut to Asher with the distorted face effect that we've seen a lot in the show of Asher, and to me just showing you that this man has a curse, like he is a cursed person, whether he actually is cursed or is just cursed symbolically in life. That is what she's seeing when she sees Asher more and more. And she says, and you wonder, is that the real them? Is my idea of them just a projection, or is that real? Really good writing there. Now, what's interesting is Dougie asked, do you ever feel like Asher's holding you back at all? This is exactly what she had said verbatim to Cara earlier in the episode, that she felt like Asher was holding her back. I think Whitney does connect the dots that Cara definitely told Dougie this, and that's why she's like, next question. And it also is a very serious question to ask somebody that she's just not ready to answer yet. But this also confirms how much Dougie and Cara share with each other, and that they're just laughing, obviously, about Whitney and Asher all the time behind their backs. Now, I want to go to everything with Asher. We get to see his corporate comedy class, which I was thrilled to see, because I love the original scene there, so I was happy we saw it again. I thought it was very interesting that the teacher talks about Rodney Dangerfield and how he's a master of self-deprecating humor, and it's the safest form because you make yourself the butt of the joke. This is really important because this is like the meta part of the show, where that's also the actor who plays Asher, Nathan Fielder. He is right now the king of self-deprecating humor. And it is, in this time, especially the safest form of humor, because you're making yourself the butt of the joke. Now, what's really good about this is he talks about emotional intelligence, and people are drawn to those that are self-aware. Asher is someone who is completely low on emotional intelligence. This is shown so much in the show. Like I had mentioned about Abshir saying, let's go talk somewhere, I have to show you something, and he's still like, oh, what do you need to show me? Like, things like that. It's just such a low emotional intelligence, and it's opposite of someone like a Dougie, who is very high emotional intelligence, and you see why Whitney's connecting with him more and more and less with Asher, because that is someone you can have more intelligent conversation and reads people well. What's also interesting about this humiliating moment for Asher with the penis joke is he actually had an out before this happened, but his low emotional intelligence has screwed him again, because the teacher was setting him up for a joke about him losing a prior job, and then he clarifies exactly what happened, and he's like, okay, but you can exaggerate the truth for the joke. So Asher is just not even getting the lesson that was just right in front of him. And one of the cringiest moments of the show is when he says the joke, there's one thing I would like to stretch, my penis. It was so hard to watch this. But you see the backlash the class gives the teacher for putting him on the spot like this. And he then throws Asher completely under the bus. And he's like, Asher told a joke that offended everyone. You crossed the line. And the teacher kicks him out of the class, but Asher here rightfully snaps at the teacher. But he says a hysterical line. If you were really funny, you wouldn't be teaching in a Legion Hall. You would be on YouTube like the comedians I watch. So good. Such a Nathan Fielder line. But you really feel more and more bad for Asher as this episode goes on. It's also interesting little details they do with characters in the show I love. Like, Asher runs over his food meals when he goes home. And just like Asher would, you know, he's very worried about an ATM fee. So he's the same man that if some of his meals got destroyed by driving them over, he's wrapping them himself now in wrap. And also is another way of just visually showing, too, that while he's seeing this casino thing start to blow up in his face a bit, that he's having trouble wrapping these meals. So he's also having trouble wrapping up these things in his life that seem so easy to take care of now. I mean, I just started laughing too when we first see Asher in the footage. Just, of course, he's laughing at the gambling addict. Like, what an idiot that he's going to probably get himself in trouble now. And this is, like I said, Whitney's so fed up with this. And she's like, when you said you witnessed this, I didn't realize you were a part of this. And she says, you wouldn't have done anything if I hadn't forced you to. You wouldn't do anything good if I didn't force you to. This is a crazy, harsh line by Whitney. It's true, though, and it's brutal. And it's interesting because I'm really thinking now with this show, there's two ways this can go with the curse and Nala and Asher. And the curse theme really leaning a lot into Asher, but it's also into Dougie, too. Remember Dougie mentioning he believes he was cursed in his life? I think this show is kind of really going back to Abshir's line about people believing in curses, and they believe it so much that they actually believe it's true and make it happen. It's like self-fulfilling. And I feel like Asher looking at his palm and the Jesus spot there with the crucifixion, now feeling like he really is cursed and everything happening in his life. And that Nala, when she sees the girl actually falls later on, she's convincing herself she's able to do this. And maybe that girl just hit into the wall and it wasn't her saying fall early on. It's the same way Dougie thinks that he was cursed when it happened with his wife. It's almost an out. And if you keep justifying it, that it's going to keep justifying your current circumstances, and maybe that martyr syndrome people can get, that they feel like they're cursed. And there's another angle to this, that Nala actually did curse Asher more than a tiny curse, when she first saw him, and that's why his life is just getting worse and worse, and he's about to be this man who is alone and doesn't know what to do with himself. And you see that with how they distort his face. So there's really two avenues I think this is going to go down, but the first one I'm still leaning towards more because of the Dougie part of it all. And it's interesting, before his interview, like I said, when we get that distorted image, it really does start to feel like an Ari Aster movie, and how much horror is actually entering the show, which I really enjoy. And you really feel for Asher here when Whit and Dougie don't even let him in on the funny story. Like, Whit is so standoffish to Asher at this point, even when she's explaining about the card charges from the store. And then when Asher sits to do his interview, Dougie completely makes up that they're out of time. He has his team say that. It's such BS. And that's so he doesn't have to interview Asher. He doesn't, care about even talking to Asher. He just wants to get all of Whitney's angles and making Asher the clown, right? The village idiot. And he gets in this dig where he says, I wanted to thank you, by the way, for never inviting me. Not even once, talking about these dinners. But this is what I was alluding to, where I think that Dougie, who we know bullied Asher as a kid, the way he had apologized but then still justifies it, I think goes back to his own martyr syndrome and his victimizing, and then just saying, you know what, this guy never will hang out with me, screw him anyway. I think that's how he justifies making this guy look like the village idiot and treating him poorly now. And you see it close with Asher taking notes on his own convos with Whitney. It's very sad, but this is like he was doing with his comedy notes earlier in the show, when he was taking notes for how he'd host, right, and be funnier. And it's showing you how he's just trying to do something that many people would normally just naturally pick up on, and that low emotional intelligence he's dealing with. And it's like the rehearsal, Nathan Fielder's other show, where he's literally watching conversations he has with other people. So there's a little almost Easter egg if you look at it. And it makes you think more and more, how much could this be something with Nathan Fielder writing a lot of these episodes and directing them, that maybe he personally has some input in his story of his life. Who really knows? There's no way to know. Now, when I was talking about Nala, I did really like this first scene. And this bully, she's trying to tell to curse and fall to go down that rope, but it doesn't happen, but she'll fall on a wall later on. And this is just going to make Nala believe in curses even more, like Abshir warned Asher not to encourage in her. And it's interesting, this gym teacher, when she tells him about the bullying, he's just like, oh, believe in yourself. He doesn't care unless it's physical, which is just terrible. Like, it's not good. But it's a really strong episode for me. I'm actually going to give this one a 9, just because it really is one, when you watch again, you appreciate it a lot more. And I like the shorter runtime. This was only 42 minutes, so it's another short episode. I think if they had added 10 minutes to this one, it would start losing me a bit. So I hope they keep these episodes coming at like 40 minutes tops. I think that's just way better than like an hour and 5 minutes. I think it just keeps the pace better, and it makes me really just like appreciate how great the acting in this show. Emma Stone just locked up an Emmy for me for this episode in particular. And Nathan Fielder, we got to consider him too, and he does such a good job as Asher in this episode, and feeling for Asher. It's a very complicated show with complicated characters, which is really interesting, and it really started to pick up too when Whitney started changing her actions now and her philosophies about Asher and Dougie, bringing her in to his side. So let me know what you thought of the episode. I'd love to hear your thoughts. I read every comment. I try to respond to as many as I can. Hit that sub button so you don't miss one of my reviews of The Curse. I'll see you next time.